Ernie, again, we are on the same wavelength, especially when it comes to birthdays. I was looking on the birthday list, November the 30th, Ruby Starr. And you had mentioned her last week, and I am looking forward, and I know our friends on the block party would love to hear your story about her.
Yeah, Ruby was really a special person. When well, it sort of started, well, actually, it did start with us working with Black Oak, Arkansas, through Butch Stone, who was their manager. And we first saw Black Oak, and I think I mentioned this before on last week's show, that we met Black Oak or we saw Black Oak for the first time. And they did a show in 1971, the end of 71, at a roller rink in LA on Sunset and Western. There used to be this big roller rink, and everybody would hang out there, and they would give concerts too. And we went to this concert, not really knowing who Black Oak, Arkansas was, but we were always looking for, new work. And one of the ways to get that work was to go to concerts, hear what they're about, get the feel, get the vibe, and then maybe go back. Either if we can't set up a meeting, if Tony, my partner who was a salesperson, couldn't set up a meeting with the group, then maybe we go through the management. We had no chance going through the record company. So we would go and do something on spec and then try and get to the management if we couldn't get to the group that night. So we go to this concert, and, here's this amazing looking guy, okay, that looked like a stallion, a white stallion with this long flowing blonde hair and bare chest and spandex white pants. And he's playing a scrub board. And he's got these things on his fingers, and they're jamming, and it was something like we had never seen before. There was nothing like that. Okay, they were the first ones. And I'm a real believer in the fact that David Lee Roth ripped off a lot of the look that Jim had. But the one thing that they didn't have his range. His vocal range was from the one end at the bottom to the top one at the top. I mean, I never heard anybody like that, and so, we saw them in 71 and toward the beginning of 72. And actually, Butch Stone reached out to us a few months later. It was like in 1970, toward the end of 72 into 73, and they were in the studio doing Raunch and Roll, okay? And that was the first album that we got a chance to, do with them. We did 8 albums for them. And I had heard Ruby's name. I had heard her, I kind of knew who she was because she was on a lot of their stuff. And I never really met her, but in 1973, they were working on the Jim Dandy to the Rescue single, and they were in LA at the studio, and Butch had us come over and meet, with her, because she was on this album again, and this single ended up being a top 30 single for them, and one of the biggest they had. Actually, it was a great song, and they were great at it, so we went in there, and we met Ruby, and I watched her do some of the vocals on Jim Dandy the Rescue, and she was like this little lady. She was tiny. Her hair was bigger than her. Right. I mean, she was, and she was like this little lady with a huge voice. And after that, I think I had mentioned to you that Black Oak was always coming. They were touring. That band toured more than any band in the history of rock and roll. They were always on the road. They toured at least 200, 250 days a year. Okay. And then the time that they weren't touring, they were in Mountain Home. They took a mountain in Black Oak and leveled it off at the top and built a big fence around it and put 7 homes and an Olympic-sized swimming pool. And that was Mountain Home. And I sent a photographer there to do some photography for the album that we were working on at the time. And he said it was amazing. Black Oak, the city, the town loved them. They were like, they made Butch a sheriff. And I mean, it was an amazing time for them. And, so when they came through LA one time, going to a gig in San Diego, they had this big tour bus, and Ruby was on there with Dirt and the rest of the guys, Ricky and little Jimmy, and so I went on the road with them for 3 days. I went got on the bus, and I got a chance to really get to know Ruby, and she was so sweet. I mean, she was like the rest of the guys. I mean, she was one of the guys, and she had a heart. Of all the groups I've ever worked with, as a group, together, with one mind, one focus, one goal, it was that band. They were determined, and they had such a unique presence and a unique sound that, I think they should have been bigger than they were, but, like always, they run into issues and management problems and stuff like that, and ended up burning Mountain Home to the ground. I mean, it got pretty ugly, but that's a whole nother story. But anyway, when I got a chance to tour with them on the bus, we spent a lot of time, and I was talking to her, and she was talking about how she was getting ready to form a group of her own called Ruby Starr and Grey Ghost. And so she asked if we would be willing to do the album for her, and I said, absolutely, we'd love to do the album for you. And so one of the first thing that they needed was a press kit. So we created that little cartoon that you see over here of Ruby. Let me go this way. And Bill Garland was a really amazing cartoonist. He should have been, if he would have worked at Disney, he would have been their top illustrator, the animator. The guy was he was incredible. And he's also the one that did all the calligraphy and the cartooning for Spiritual Sky. When we did the Snaz thing, the same guy. So he created this little cartoon character for her. And then the first album was called Scene Stealer. And we did all these pictures of famous actors and movie stars, and she steals the scene, right? And she was like a cartoon. She was really like that cartoon because she, like I said, she was more hair than anything else. I had never seen anybody with that amount of hair, and it was red. It was red. And like I said, she was just so sweet. And then over here, what you see is a comp that we did for Grey Ghost. And it's a really cool comp, but we ended up not doing anything after Scene Stealer because of management issues, changing record labels. Butch and the boys were breaking up. And I mean, I went back and really I always thought I did like 6 albums for them. So I've done 8 albums for them. It was crazy for Black Oak. And I got a chance to, like I said, with Ruby Starr and Grey Ghost and with just Ruby Starr, the album that we did, and the little cartoon character. We also did a character. Bill did and sometime I'll post it. It's Black Oak had it was, I guess, kind of like a mission statement, I would call it. And it was basically, from the smallest acorn grows the mightiest oak. Okay, and we did this little acorn cartoon with a big muscle and a lightning bolt in its hand, and that was their logo. It's a beautiful logo. I mean, and I have the art, and then we also did a logo for their management company. It was called Sweet Tater Management, and we did the logo for that too. So, I mean, we did a lot of work for Black Oak. Ruby I wish I would have been able to do more work with her, but again, like anything else, I mean, she passed away in 1995. I can't believe she was 45 years old. Yeah.
She was so young.
Yeah, too young. And that goes back to that old saying, the candle that burns twice as bright burns half as long. The trick is to, get longevity, but thank God she was able to leave a legacy. She's had a lot of work that she's put out there. She would have been able to do a lot more had she been able to, but, actually, her name was Constance, which was a really strange name to go from that to Ruby Starr. And then she had a few names, that she went through.
Little Connie, I think.
Little Connie, yeah.
Connie.
And she started out singing country music.
In Toledo.
Yes. I mean, and so, and we talked about that kind of stuff. And like I said, I got a chance, I was blessed to be able to spend some time with her and meet her and do some stuff for her. You know, the variety of work that we did at Pacific Pioneer, one of the things that we tried to do along with the music was to keep a foot in corporate America, okay, to always have that going, and to really kind of look for other things like designing buses for the RTD, or we did all this disruptive stuff that today is considered, you know, disruptive. And then it was just what they called out of the box, you know, and we had to get through that whole segment of show me something out of the box, and then you show it to them and they freak out and they go back to what they want because it's very disruptive and they're not ready for it. So it took a lot of years to get them. And I guess it's like anything else. In time, everything sort of comes around, you know, which is a pretty amazing thing. And you know, one of the other things that I wanted to talk with you briefly about today, you know, and that is this opportunity. I mean, not only did I get a chance to voice what I went through 6 years ago with a lawsuit, and you saw it on
Yes,
Facebook,
yes.
and I've had hundreds of people, unbelievable. I mean, I'm really, really moved at not only the neighbors on our block, but future neighbors that are going to be coming to our block. And it's going to get better and better. And Facebook, and just the people that are so willing to understand and open up to something that's different, something that's out of the box, maybe from what they're used to hearing. And this opportunity, you know, that happened with this lawsuit where I could finally talk about it. I had to live with that for like almost 6 years before I could talk about it. We won, you know, never went to court. It ended with my attorney writing 2 letters, and that was the end of it. But it cost a lot of money, and more than anything, the frustration of not being able to talk about it. And so now that was up, and I was able to voice it, and hundreds of people. I mean, I've never had a response like that, even on a birthday, you know. So it was really pretty amazing. And so right on the heels of that, this whole thing actually before that, I was able to announce that we had been working on this opportunity with Goldmine magazine. And yeah, I mean, I told you earlier, I compare that with the 18-month show that we had at the Smithsonian in Memphis. I mean, this is huge. I mean, there's 40,000 music fans and collectors that are subscribing to this publication. And, you know, it's a great story. It's 20 pages long with images and stuff. So for the first time, there's going to be stuff that people have never heard before that is hopefully going to change the way they look at stuff and the way getting the rights for artists is key, because they're very easily and often ripped off for what they've done. And I get a lot of people on Facebook asking me, what can I do? I did this and they didn't pay me. And, you know, it happens all the time. It happens to everyone, musicians and artists alike in my world. But, you know, musicians are more protected, you know. But then I found out that after 37 years or after 35 years, the rights go back to the creator. So that's a good thing, because all my stuff is 50 years old. So,
well, you know what, Ernie, sometimes movers and shakers, they have to go through that, you know, I don't like to use the word hell, but maybe in a sense it is. And movers and shakers have to, you know, you made a statement and you persisted. That's the thing. And you said you kept to the truth.
Yeah, I never gave up.
Coming out, and it's coming out, which is beautiful.
Yeah, well, you know, I always, my mantra was always, you know, if you never quit, you can never lose. You know, it's just like that. I mean, I've known people in the past that have been friends, and they'll lose once or twice, and they give up.
Yes.
You know,
yes,
I mean, I had a very good friend that wanted to be an actor, and he was great. I mean, he could sing, he could dance, he could act. He had a unique look, and he gave himself 5 years. And after that 5 years, he got fed up and went back home and went to work for his dad's company, I guess. But it's funny how chasing a dream is very tough.
Yes,
It's
it
a hard
is.
thing to do. You got a lot of people telling you you're crazy. You got, the world and the people in it, the opportunities that happen. Had I never gone to New York, I would have never been able to realize what I was able to do. And we've talked about that. Like, I'd have lived in the Bay Area, never had a chance to do Jesus Christ Superstar or any of the rest of the other stuff that I've ever, I have my own company. None of that would have ever happened. I was just watching, they're running it every 2 hours, It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh, that
Okay.
is inspiring.
And it's so funny because I'm watching that, and now I'm coming on here and talking to you and our neighbors. Okay. And it's like when he said, I wish I would have never been born. And he started to realize how the world would have been totally different had he never been born, had he never made a mark, had he never made a decision that helped or hurt or whatever. None of that would have happened. And now we're talking about this now. I mean, and it's so true. Had my career taken a different path, none of this would have ever happened. And Ivor wrote about that. He wrote about, what if the stuff that we did never happened? I mean, what would have happened? Would it have changed anything? Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so funny because when I see people talking about album covers and stuff on Facebook and other platforms, they always talk about the old stuff. There's not a whole lot of new stuff, covers. Well, I mean, that was an industry that's kind of dead now anyway, but, with the way you buy music today, and share it, I mean, so it's kind of different. But again, on on our show on the 10th, we'll go into a lot of detail.
We are so excited
and
about
it's only
that.
going to happen on the block party. It's
Thank
only
you.
going to happen to the neighbors first. It's not going to go anywhere in explanation. The publication drops on the 15th, I think, and our show is on the 10th. So this is going to be a way of getting an inside track on something that's pretty monumental and has changed my world, that's for sure. And I want to share it.
And we are deeply honored, Ernie. Oh my, I don't know what to say. I'm at a loss for words. That
Oh,
is.
no, you're never a loss for words. Come on now. No, I appreciate you being, so open and willing to share that with me and our neighbors. And again, it means the world. It really does. I listen to your show every week, and it's just great. I get great music that I love to hear, and I get the education that I didn't know. And I'm hoping that, and I think it's happening. I mean, I'm getting hundreds of views when I post our show after you posted it. And of course, Jack is helping us big time. And, my whole goal is to get it out there. And the only place it's really going to be heard in any detail is the block party.